How NFP scrambled Tim Gordon's brain. 2 years ago, Tim Gordon explained to us marriage has one telos, one primary purpose, one essence, one end. 3 months ago, Tim then explained how marriage has two teloses, two primary purposes, two ends. My theory is that Tim has grown not because of logic, but because of politics. Like the movie coming out, you had to have some unity in there. Father Ripperger probably got to him, got to have unity. If you're not careful, NFP can turn you into a new Pentecost walking contradiction type Catholic, short on logic. In this video, we will expose Tim's contradiction so that it does not happen to you. I'm John Farrell, your NFP spiritual dictator. This is Annulment Proof.
Two heads are better than one. That's a saying that is oh so true. Two heads are better than one.
They're me! They're you!
That's two. And between the two of you, you can solve any problem that comes up. No. It's much better to be two.
Yeah, you look at me the word!
Cause what you don't know or can't figure out, you can try to.
Try!
Of course! What could go wrong with this? Obviously.
The more,
Man,
the merrier.
I love it.
You
I
bet.
love it. I remember watching this.
Two heads are better than one.
Okay, I can't take it. Look. Tim has gone from one head to two heads, which is why I put that on the thumbnail, right? First, we're going to go through the video all about how Tim explains how marriage has one head, and now he's going to try to hang on to that while inviting the second one. Later in this video, we'll show the contradiction and how this is important, not because we're going to pick on Tim. I like Tim. I'm trying to convert Tim. He's excellent raw material. He's just got everything right except A, foul language, B, he's into this NFP, which is undercutting. It's injecting feminism into everything he does. I don't know if he realizes it or he doesn't want to realize it. I know he's not comfortable talking about it because it doesn't make sense. Now, let's just take this away. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So this is the video from 2 years ago. This was like Tim when he was good, and he was knocking it out of the park, and he's saying, what's wrong with JP2? What are some things that are wrong? Let's listen. Cool.
You can't do that. And on the supposedly two teloi goals of matrimony, there is no one closer to Pius V than myself.
Yes, that's because Pius V said there's one telos, and that's exactly what Tim is saying here. I'm a Pius V guy, one telos. JP2 is all about this two telos stuff, right? Right.
And these, my friends, parish orphans and retrogrades.
So that's it. He's admitting that JP2 is a two telos guy and that he is not. All right, let's go to the next clip.
Teaching a free class on the Roman Catechism? Oh yeah, because this is the Pius V Catechism. Everything this catechism says is gold.
Excellent. I love it. He's exactly right. That's because it's based on the infallible Council of Trent rather than the new CCC, which is based on the poetry of Vatican II, which is not infallible.
Okay, that's not true with regard to the less universal, not attached to an ecumenical council, Catechism of the Catholic Church, which has a lot of JP2's and Francis's fruitiness wired into it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, wait. Oh.
Intellectual lightweight.
All right, so that's that. Hang on. This is the point of my video. Intellectual fruitiness. Timothy Gordon has totally eaten of the fruit, man, and he's into it. He tries to not expose his inner Christopher West, but it's going to be hard because he's saying, now we have two teloi. But listen up. Let's see what he says next.
Charged upon what JP2 reversed. All right, let's start with something easy. None of these are actually that easy. The two teloi, the two goals of marriage, and I say two because there's only one.
Remember that soundbite. I say two because there's only one. Correct. NFP requires two. Otherwise, you are pursuing flesh instead of procreation, which is an overturning of the ends, the order, which is contraception, which is mortal sin. Can't do that if you're using a method, okay? But if we have to have NFP, all what he's saying is out the window. So I think somebody got to Tim, is what I think. I think he was going along with logic, normal stuff. Okay, like politicians who say, you know, we should keep the police going, or we're gonna have to arrest bad guys. Then after they go to DC for a while, and they're like, we need to understand the bad guys and defund the police. That's just idiot weirdo stuff that only a politician can say. And I think once you start getting into a little more Catholic ink, or you've got to uphold NFP, you can't do logic, which is why guys like Taylor Marshall blocks when I bring up what the Harrison Butker said about there's nothing natural about Catholic birth control. What do? You block, because you can't engage, because you can't talk, because it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, we're not trying to beat up on Tim. I wish Tim would look at this and just kind of admit what's going on. All right. But you're going to have to watch the whole video to catch on to what I'm saying. I'll expose it. Go, Tim, go.
Okay, you have to understand Aristotelianism a little bit. Something has 4 causes. There's a formal cause, a final cause,
whatever,
an efficient cause, and a material
cause. Too many
cause.
big words,
I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but the point is, something can only have one final cause.
Excellent point. Logic correct, which is what, when I had Father Noiseau on a couple weeks ago, he says, everyone's looking in the mirror and saying, or marriage can have 2 primary purposes. Like you can have 2 heads and not have a problem. It's natural to have 2 heads. No, no, nor is it natural for the church to have 2 heads. Or you say, hello, or the church is a head, just like Christ is a head, and that's going to, no.
A substance can only have one final cause.
Marriage is a substance because marriage is an office of nature, not an office of symbolism or an office of charity. It's an office of nature, substance.
That's a fact. One final cause. The final cause is called the telos.
All right, so listen, you got to remember this, because we're going to, later in the video, he's going to look you straight in the eye and say, we have 2 teloses, and it's not a contradiction to have 2 primary ends and 2 teloses, but I'm telling you 2 years ago that you can only have 1 telos, 1 primary end. So which is it, Tim? Obviously, it's this one, because you've gone with the JP2 fruitiness because of your NFP has to retrofit Pius V, yeah, and Trent and all that stuff. It's all that's going on here. It's NFP politics. Prove me wrong. Maybe don't block. Maybe engage a little, Tim, instead of just like, whoa, we got to block. Okay, hang on.
It's purpose, goal, cause. And the telos of marriage is procreation. Now, principle of double effect doesn't only work. I mean, the principle only works for negative, bad things. But there are 2 simultaneous effects of all sorts of stimuli in this world, and a lot of times they're good. There is a second effect of joining together with an opposite sex person, Steph and Tim Gordon, get together.
Yeah,
to procreate
okay,
a
yeah. We got to get to the next part
effect,
here real quick.
A triple effect, a quadruple effect. We're happy.
2950.
We wind up in South Mississippi. We have a swimming pool. All of these are effects that are nice, that I like, because we got together toward the final cause, meaning the reason for which it exists, our marriage, which is procreation.
Yep.
John Paul II simply and haphazardly, I would have used an uglier adverb, haphazardly confused for a second telos, which is a contradiction in terms.
Second telos, contradiction in terms. Exactly, because nature has 1 purpose, 1 telos. I'm sorry I'm being so like hitting you over the head with this over and over. You got to remember this, because later in the video he's going to say marriage has 2 teloses, 2 teloi, and that's fine. Marriage has 2 primary, and that's fine. Marriage has a primary and a secondary, and a primary and a primary, and that's, listen, you cannot, NFP is whacked out. NFP is not nature. It's contraception. It's just organic contraception masked in a house of cards propaganda that no one's allowed to talk about, and no one will engage in it because it falls apart if you do.
One of the ergons, one of the intelligible properties of marriage, which are part of the formal cause of it, which is like its quiddity or its definition. Let me read you something. The essential properties of marriage, unity and indissolubility.
By the way, what's he reading? I don't know what he's reading from, but the essential properties of marriage, the essential elements of marriage are unity and indissolubility. That's correct. Unity is exclusivity. Union with one person. Exclusive and indissolubility is permanence. We've got to get our terms right, which I'll talk more about later.
Offer an opportunity for a fruitful reflection on marriage. Today, taking up what I treated last year in my discourse on indissolubility, I want to examine indissolubility as a good for spouses.
I guess this is JP2. Indissolubility as a good for spouses. Well, yeah, marriage permanence is good. It's not the good of marriage, but it's good for spouses.
Good for spouses, for children, for the church, for the whole of humanity. Now, this is from his address to the prelate, auditors, officials, advocates of the tribunal on the Roman Rota, just before he passed away. This is in January of 2002. John Paul II. So the J2P2s are going into like robot mode. Okay. Oil can. Bonk. Bonk. R2D2 keeps falling because he is a J2P2. He would be if he were Catholic, but he's just a robot. You guys, on the other hand, are Catholics who are not actual robots who act like it. So what he does here is very simple. It's very clear to me. In all the variant places where JP2 talks about the two goals of marriage.
Ooh, two goals.
Contradiction in terms.
Two goals, contradiction in terms. Remember that. Timothy Gordon is going to contradict himself in this video later. So just remember this. Like I said, we're not trying to beat up on Tim. We're trying to convert Tim, and we're trying to expose how people who are normal get weird when they have to eat NFP, when they have to put it in their system. They have to take logic and throw it out the window. Then when you come at them with 2 + 2 = 4, they accuse you of being divisive or mean-spirited or whatever. You know, like, we're not going to talk to you. Yeah, you're interrupting my safe space with this logic. So anyhow, I would be curious to hear what Tim Gordon is, how he explains his way out of this, but you're going to have to watch. If I would shut up, maybe we could get somewhere.
Talking about a Telos style final cause goal, where he talks about the mutual good of the spouses, mutual happiness of the spouses as one, and as procreation as the other goal of holy matrimony. Well, he's simply confusing an ergon, the formal cause of marriage, which is its definition, its quiddity, its recognizability, its intelligibility, its intelligible principle, which makes the thing hold together. That's what it's a form. A form. There's form.
Yes, the edifice of marriage, the institution of marriage, the legal definition, the restricted definition of marriage is the substance of it. All right. Procreation, not the expanded definition or the broad view, which is love and white picket fences and all this other stuff.
Form and there's matter. Okay? He's confusing its form, which might have multiple essential properties, with its goal, with its final cause, with its telos. A telos must be one, whereas something's like essence can have multiple elements.
So he's a little bit goofy here. Yes, the essence can have elements. It can only have one purpose, though. So he said something a few minutes ago, 20 seconds ago, is a little weird, but we're not going to worry about it.
Essential properties. So a human being is a rational animal. 2 essential properties. That's what we would call the quiddity, or if you want, the form of a human being is the rational part. But it's rational animality. It's animalian rationality. A human being has these 2 parts of the definition. And the 2 essential properties of marriage are unity and indissolubility. So they're both part of the description of the formal cause of marriage.
So all he just said was the two elements, okay? Element of marriage. Permanence and no cheating. You got one husband and one wife. That's it. Exclusivity. That's it. So got to be careful when you use that word unity, because unity just goes all over the place. Exclusivity, permanence. Those are the elements of marriage.
Unity corresponds with procreation, because when you...
Whoa! Okay, see, Tim, you got a problem already. Unity corresponds with procreation. No. Well, unity is just exclusivity. That's all it is. Let's hear what he has to say. Because I think Tim was showing cracks already in this video 2 years ago when he was pretty good.
Not to be gross or anything. Let me put it as non-pornographically as possible. Unity really means procreation.
No, Tim. Unity really means exclusivity, no cheating, no adultery. Okay? That's it, Tim. Sorry, bro. You were getting scrambled. Your brains were getting scrambled even before you made this good video. But you really took flight, my man, once you ingested publicly the NFP, because you couldn't hang on. You had to go full-blown gay marriage, so to speak, just like politicians get, like Joe Biden. Do you think Joe Biden grew up with saying, look, Jack, same-sex marriage, you know, two guys, that's really great? No, of course not. He had to be forced into it because he had no principles. When you start saying NFP is Catholic, Pius V is gone. You might as well burn the catechism, burn that book, all right? It's gone. You have to have no veils, you know, equality everywhere, right? Mutual submission. Got to have it, or you can't have NFP, but you got to have your NFP. So what are you going to do, Tim? Not talk about it.
It's a copulation term. When a husband and wife are one flesh, that means 9 months later, expect a baby.
Yeah. Anyway, I've talked about that before. One flesh is just a metaphysical term or whatever. When you become literally one flesh and legally one flesh, whatever. But it's not, has nothing to do with emotional connection. It's like zero.
Right. So unity is procreation.
Unity is not procreation. Unity is exclusivity. But the reason why Tim is saying this is because he's already ramping up for his later full-blown goofiness 3 months ago when he starts saying that there's two telos. It's the only way you can get it. You can't do anything about it if you don't reject NFP. It's kind of like if you're not Catholic, you're going to end up becoming an atheist at some point because you've got no infallibility. If you don't accept nature, you're going to end up being transgender. And so Tim is on his way to transgenderism because he's accepted NFP. It's just logic eventually, if he lives long enough to go there.
Solubility pertains to the good or the happiness, the eudaimonia of the spouses.
Hold on. Let's just review that, and I'm gonna get into this a little bit. Okay, 30. Okay, let's go back just a little bit. Okay, hang on.
And wife are one flesh. That means 9 months later, expect a baby, right? So unity is procreation. Indissolubility pertains to the good or the happiness, the eudaimonia of the spouses.
Indissolubility is just permanence. That's all it means, right? Right.
Which is true.
Okay, so just for kicks, we're gonna look you didn't whatever that EU word was. Let's look it up for just a minute. Okay, I found it. Eudaimonia. However you pronounce that. Anyway, that word is a Greek word literally translating the state of condition of a good spirit, which is commonly translated as happiness or welfare. Fine. So yes, permanence gives you happiness or welfare. And why does marriage laws work to their advantage? This is from the Council of Trent. Okay. Unto the married I command you, not I, but the Lord, that wife not depart from her husband, but if she depart, let her remain unmarried or reconciled to her husband. Thus to her has relinquished her husband for a just cause. The only alternative left by the apostle, remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. The church does not permit one to separate. Okay. Without most weighty reasons. That's why you need the bishop's permission to separate. That is the exception clause in Matthew 19:9. For adultery, you can separate. It has nothing to do with validity. Anyway, they explain that it's beneficial consequences. So the marriage law is good when you make marriage about not the object of consent, but the subject of consent or the symbolism of consent. That's bad because you remove the beneficial consequences of having the old ball and chain, the iron cage. What you become insecure because you are floating in subjective love, which is circumstantial rather than ironclad. It's kind of like if you have a guaranteed income versus you don't know what's going to come tomorrow for money. All right, same idea. Okay, let's go back to the video. Hold on.
Which is true. In this, which I take to be like hard doctrine that's not going to change, it talks in great, beautiful lengths in part 2 of the Sacraments chapter on how if you don't allow, and this is important, people, if you don't allow Christians to divorce like the Jews or the Gentiles, or like the kind of super Gentiles, the Protestants, which this is written in 1566 after the English Reformation.
So if you don't allow people to divorce,
there were spouse divorcing, concubine whoring Protestants at this point. Like the concubine whoring heresiarch who sat and sits in the throne of England. If you don't allow them to dissolve their marriage like a Jew or a Gentile or a Protestant, then it works to their advantage. It works to their happiness. That does not mean that happiness becomes the goal of matrimony.
That's a great point. And there's a couple other things I want to touch on in the notes on that. Okay, yes. So he was correctly pointing out that marriage is not, love is not the goal, but love is kind of you might call the fruit of the structure, right? So we don't, like I say, sorry, Scott Hahn, it's not life-giving love, but it's love-giving contract. So there's beneficial consequences to entering the contract, which is you throw away the key and it's ironclad and your rights and duties are clearly delineated with the right over the body, not the right to someone's idea of love, right? All right. If marriage were dissolved, this is what Tim was just talking about. And this is good. He had this stuff down pretty good in the beginning. If marriage was dissoluble by divorce, married persons could scarcely ever want causes of dissension. That's because, like the two guys behind me, these two heads, man, it's all fun and games until someone really says, we want to have more kids, and the other one says, no, we don't. Or we're going to do this for our kids, or the other one says, no, we're not. Or I'm tired of you, and the other one says, I'm not tired. You know what I'm saying? It gets real, so there has to be laws. Cool? Right. Now, okay, the enemy, the old enemy, the devil, would never fail to throw in their way enemies of peace and justice. When the faithful reflect themselves, so if you're going to be honest, even separated as to bed and board, they are still held bound by the tie of marriage. And so that all hope of a wedding a second wife is cut off. This is why all this Matthew 19:9 exception clause for being in validity is super bad. And it only came out after Vatican II. If everybody knows, where else are they going to go? They have nowhere to go. They're not going to leave. But if they're told you can find love, quote, elsewhere, you can bail, you get all that, you get 50% at least of everything, plus you get a new spouse, plus you go to heaven, people are going to be like, I'm taking that deal all day. Instead of elevating yourself to sainthood within your state of life, aka marriage at this point. So they're still held bound by marriage, and that all hope of wedding a second wife is cut off. They become slower to anger and dissensions. Oh, really? Yeah. And if sometimes separated, feeling the regrets of separation insufferable, they are easily reconciled to their fellowship of living through the intervention of friends. And you know who else says that? Arcanum, Leo the 13th, same dang thing. Reconciliation is easy when you look at the alternative. No money, no marital debt, and no other boyfriends or girlfriends, and no remarriage. You get nothing. So you're like, okay, just like the prodigal son. He's like, yeah, forget this noise. I'll go back to my dad and I'll say I was wrong. There you go. This is what also the Catechism If you text me, if you go in the text messages, or excuse me, the comment section, I'll tell you which section. I don't know offhand. It says all Catholic faithful are required. They must go to these people living in separation and try to reconcile them, try to make them live their state in life. All right. Anyway, there you go. If marriage is locked in, if we have an objective definition, one telos, one nature, we now have something objective that we can consent to, an object of consent. And we're not getting out, because if we do, all this applies and we have no hope of anything else, it's going to bite bad and our friends will reconcile us. Right? That's the way it always has been. You have to realize that your bishop is your enemy on this. He's selling annulments. He says divorce is not a sin. And that the exception clause for Matthew 19:9 is for invalidity, which is what Catholic Inc. says. Everyone says that. I wouldn't be surprised if Timothy Gordon grows and says that as well at some point. I can't ask him because he blocks me everywhere. I email him, he won't respond. Nothing. Okay, yeah, this is why easy annulments incentivize divorce. Exactly. You don't, all this stuff, I'm just going to go pedal to the metal the other way and liberate myself, and everyone says, you go, girl. It's really great.
So JP2, I think this one might be an honest mistake. He's a touchy-feely kind of, and not in a bad way. He's a personalist kind of pope.
Personalism is, you might say it's touchy-feely, but what it really is it's evil at its core, because it has to redefine marriage. Because like George Bush wants a kinder and gentler government, John Paul II wanted a kinder and gentler marriage, which means we're going to legalize love, which becomes the tyranny of will. And you've got these two guys behind us. One says this, love says we're doing this. The other says love says we're doing that. Who's in charge? Love is in charge. They're just going to rip through that outfit right there. There's their contract, that purple suit, and they're just going to rip right through it. All right. Continuing. Go, Tim, go.
He wanted to be everyone's best friend. And that's going to be a recurring theme. He wanted to say, oh, you know what's as fuzzy and happy and nice feeling is two people, a man and a woman, getting together to have a little baby? Well, it's them getting together, having a little baby, but being really happy. And they're happy. They're so happy.
Sure. Again, making happiness a legal requirement is a recipe for separation and divorce, because there's no one unit. Unity is, you got to have one for unity, which is why all the bishops want to have one mass, one rite, because they're trying to be unity. Obviously, you got to have unified. You got to have one. Okay, so you just got to pick the correct one. And if we have love as our one unifying, it automatically divides, because it's not, you can't define it. But obviously you have to have one. If you have one liturgy, you can have unity. But if you have two different rites, you're going to, it's not a great analogy. It doesn't work. But the point is, unity is around one, not two. So this is why when you have two telos, it's a recipe for disaster. You've created two heads.
Well, yeah, that might be part of the intelligible form of Christian marriage, linked to its indissolubility. So it's one of the elements of the definition, which means it's part of the form.
Okay, he just said a bunch of goo, which doesn't make sense. You just have to define your terms. There's two elements: permanence, exclusivity. One purpose, procreation, education. That's a telos. The others are building blocks or elements, okay? And they're not connected per se. They just exist, and they're all part of the structure.
The ergon of marriage. But teloi, this isn't a thing.
Remember, he said that. Teloi is not a thing. Later in this video, he's going to look you right in the camera and is going to say teloi is a thing. And like I always said, I think it's because of politics. It's not because he thought this through and said, wow, all this procreation primary? It's so unbased. We know so much more now. Where's my NFP? NFP isn't even a thing. All you're doing, as long as you have the nuts and the bolts, there's nothing else to talk about. Purposes don't matter because we don't want to talk about one telos anymore because we're pursuing whatever we want.
There's only one telos for each substance.
One telos for each substance. I'll take that. That's right.
And the telos, the goal of marriage, is procreation.
The telos, the end, the goal. You must be pursuing procreation or it's a venial sin. If you use a method so that you don't procreate when you're supposed to be, that's mortal sin. Overturning the hierarchy of ends. I don't care what kind of family planning you want. All these terms are euphemisms. Birth control, family planning, contraception. They're all basically euphemisms for we're going to violate nature. We're going to murder God's nature, his natural plan. We're going to murder providence. So you might as well call it providence murder. You know, that's all it is. Natural providence murder. Okay.
Okay, that's just a fact. So I think with issue number 1 here, JP2, it's a whiff, right? A whiff at bat. He doesn't understand that a substance can only have one telos.
I think he does understand that, but he wants there to be legalized love because I don't know what's driving JP2, what was up. The feminism, I don't think he had homo friends. Maybe he did in the acting school. I don't know. I don't think that's it, man. He just wanted, he wanted kinder and gentler. He did, you know what, man? I think he was rejecting the patriarchy. I think that's what it was. And the way to do it is go with what Dietrich von Hildebrand said. We need love as essence. And the way to do that is to just to sell everybody on love. And we're going to have to say the whole increase and multiply is no longer nature, and that 1 Timothy 2:15, I think it is, she will be saved through childbearing if she continue. That's all like, that's not love. That's just a baby producing machine. So I think he was just trying to get rid of all that and improve the gospel, and you just wreck it. You improve natural law, you wreck it. Look at the statistics today.
Straight, plain and simple. He thought he could get personalist, get a little artistic, get Polish up in here on goals of marriage. Just make it fuzzier. He wanted to make things fuzzier and happier. This is what his personalism was all about. Well,
exactly. That's he wanted to, so that he could accommodate NFP and annulment, Tim, and no sin divorce, because there's abuse and we already set the ball rolling for NFP in 1951. So we let the water out of the dam. Now everyone's starting to water their crops with this water all over the land because we let the water out, all right, with 1951 NFP. Now you're going to say, put all that stuff back. Can't do it. Not going to do it. So we have to start tweaking marriage or we're really hosed. And I think this is why it's going to be divine intervention to save this, because you can't take away people's NFP without there being a Catholic riot. You think it's like instead of in Minneapolis, we'll have all of Rome getting the Pope Mobile will get thrown rocks at it if he tries to take NFP away. It'd be a riot.
It's like math. Philosophy is like math. Theology a lot of times is artistic and you can use all this flowery language, but philosophy, particularly metaphysics, when we talk about ontologically what something is in its 4 causes, what something is in its 4 modes of in its 6 modes of composition, it's really mathematical. And he just whiffed there. Okay, what should I go to next? I've been uncertain on the order. Let me go to something else.
All right, that's cool for now. Okay, what's he got now?
Is his affirmation of John the 23rd's new Pentecost.
This is
a
good.
kind of backdrop, a kind of,
as I said in the intro,
theological justification
new
for
Pentecost,
setting aside the principle of non-contradiction.
Excellent. The new Pentecost. He's giving us, Tim is correctly explaining how we can set aside the law of non-contradiction because it's the new Pentecost. Because the, quote, new Pentecost has ushered in NFP, has ushered in subjective and subjective law, subjective nature, which is why Cardinal Burke and the Dubia brothers were like, hey, is there objective sin anymore? Does this even exist? Not with the new Pentecost, apparently, because all it is, they've just introduced the subject of law, subjective law, the subjective object. So marriage is no longer objective because NFP requires legal non-constraints, legal dual telos.
Meaning, even though there's only one telos of marriage, now we can just say there are two.
So, Tim, that's exactly what you do, my man, in your next video.
Because it's post-New Pentecost.
Are you a New
After
Pentecost guy now?
Birthday for 2,000 years.
Hope not.
You had to operate where things made sense without contradiction.
We had to operate where things made sense without contradiction. Hello. That's like saying we're trying not to have babies and we're open to life. We're open to life in other words, we're totally pro-life, but we're totally pro not having babies. Okay, we're trying to get pregnant, but we're trying to not get pregnant at the same time. That's how much sense we're making. By the way, open to life is a total smokescreen. Open to life means procreation secondary. If every conjugal act is oriented towards procreation, then why are you using the conjugal act to be oriented towards not procreation? Oh, because I read Theology of the Body and Love and Responsibility, and you need to do the same thing, and you need to really slowly so you can catch on to why pursuing non-procreation is really pursuing procreation. Do you see how simple it is? That's how dumb we are. Dumb. It's like completely stupid.
But after the second Pentecost, the second birthday of the church, now we don't really have to pay heed to the principle of contradiction any longer. Therefore, we could say there are two goals of marriage. Or we could say, let's go to number 3.
All right, that's it. Let's go to the next. Okay, here we go.
Committed to chaste single life bears witness to the kingdom of God through his chastity, through her chastity. This is a good thing. However, this doesn't make it a vocation. And he would on several occasions speak of the 4 vocations.
Marriage is not a
The third one's
vocation.
not really problematic because it's tied almost at the hip to holy orders without formal orders, okay? But there's a sacramental fork in the road. JP2, I think I understand how the guy's mind worked. He's a phenomenologist. He was a personalist. He didn't want anyone left out in the cold. That's fine and dandy. But you can't, it's fine to say what he says here. The person committed to the chaste single life, this is true, bears witness to that kingdom of God, and his justice is that great pearl which is preferred to every other value, no matter how great. You could still get to heaven. But God permitted you to live and die alone in his will. He did not will for it. We have to believe that each person is called to 6 of the sacraments. It's that simple, okay? This is the proof.
This is when Tim is good.
Each person in the ordinary case is called to 6 of the sacraments. There is exceptions to the rules. Every rule has its exception. But the proof here is that he is creating a class of persons that if it's a true vocation, single chaste people who never marry, it's no longer an exception. For these people, you're just called to 5 of the sacraments, whereas every other Christian is called to 6 of them. Sorry, Anglican ordinariate. I don't really think this is a whole other issue. I don't think anyone's called to 7 of 7. That's just too goofy. We're called to 6 of the 7. And the 7ness, the completeness, is informed by our choice between holy matrimony and holy orders. Okay? Love is the fundamental and innate vocation of every human being.
So that's JP2. Love is the vocation of every human being. Not really. I mean, it depends on how it's applied. So when we're elevating love, now we make marriage about love, okay? And this is what it sounds so good. God is love, therefore God must be marriage, and marriage must be love. Love wins. And what happens is law loses, and therefore people get trashed when you remove law, because sin enters and destroys.
John Paul II says in Familiaris Consortio, paragraph 11. Well, I mean, yeah, love's a vocation in that anagogical sense, because Christ is love, Christ is the Word. It's just so poetic. It's so poetic, and he's not doing himself any favors. Even if this one's not a hard error, I said 5 of these are pretty hard errors. This is just really fruity, okay?
Really
yes, love's
fruity,
an
man.
innate vocation. It's a calling because we're called to Jesus. But he's using what JP2 does that I don't like, that is Spirit of Vatican II, that is very post-conciliar, that's really, really consistent with the Spirit of Vatican II, is he'll use an expression 5 times in a really proverbial sense, heavily figuratively, heavily poetically. And then the 6th time he uses it, he says, okay, now I've established this baseline of this poetic usage. Now I want to use it analytically.
Exactly. This is really important. What are we talking about? There's a lot of Vatican II in there too. When they talk about marriage is this loving relationship thing. And now that we've established, or they say, in light of all this, in other words, now that we've established this fact that this poetry is marriage, you have to do this for validity. You have to have true love, exercise true love for validity. Who else does it? Well, Humanae Vitae does that. They talk all about, they set you up, they gaslight. This is what's going on. Marriage is love, love and unity, the inseparable significances of unitive significance and procreation. Those significances, now all of a sudden, without you noticing, we are now going to treat a significance as blood and guts, as nature, as flesh, as purpose. You didn't even know it. It sounded so good. You're like, wow, this is amazing. Theology of the body and love and responsibility are the same way. They take all these high-sounding, flowery concepts, words, poetry, groovy love stuff, and then they say, boom, the legal definition of marriage is love, and love is tyranny in a legal definition. In other words, I have a right to feel good. That's where you have a right to be happy comes from. I have a right to feel good because love feels good. And I have a right to receive love, and I'm receiving not love from you at this time. So therefore, you better speak my love language, or whatever that is. And then you're back to the problem. These two people are not going to get along for more than 10 minutes or 10 years. Someone's going to rip out of that one flesh, man. They're just going to do it. They can't take it anymore unless they know they have got to stay together. And if they try to rip themselves apart, it's going to be death. This reminds me of a picture. I'm going to show you something right now.
Look at this, guys. These are 2 of the smartest girls in their grade. This is proof that they are 2 geniuses, and they even have...
That's really totally weird. So they're obviously born that way and stuff. But here's just a gross example. But look, if these 2 girls do not cooperate, it's going to be death. Okay, so you don't want to put yourself in that position. You have to have one in charge, and it's going to work much better. But I just wanted to show there's an example of where if you make love the primary purpose, then one person's going to say, I want X, and the other person going to say, I want Y, and I get a right to them, and they're going to trash the place. So it's bad. Okay, hold on a second. Let's get rid of this.
Literally.
Go, Tim. Go ahead. Are you on?
So
okay.
There you go. There you go. I just, I don't like how he does that. Love might be a vocation in some secondary sense, But that doesn't mean that every human being, even those who don't get married or don't become priests, have a vocation to a single life insofar as they're called to love in the primary sense. No.
Yes, love in the primary sense. Marriage is not love in the primary sense. But if it is, then love, I guess that's why then marriage becomes a vocation, because love is a charity, comes from God, not nature. Okay, it's not a natural thing. Procreation is natural, but love is supernatural. So this is why marriage is now a vocation. Therefore, if love is a vocation, then you can love being single. You can just go out and be charitable to everybody. I have my single vocation. No. So Tim Gordon is right. Once you invite NFP into the church, you must move a ton of stuff. It's like, you know, if you've got a set your triangle of pool balls, all right, and you're just gonna put all the balls in the triangle to break it, and it's got, I don't know how many, 16 balls or whatever it is. If you want to put number 17 in there, something's got to move. Everything's got to get shifted. And that's what NFP does. It shifts everything. And you got to go out and put out all these little fires, and they don't make sense, which is why no one wants to talk about it.
Okay. So the celibate layperson as a vocation, just troubling. Troubling, if not a hard error. Very troubling.
Okay, now, guess what? We're going to go into the second part of this video where we talk. Now, this is only 3 months ago. Everything Tim said, all this good stuff. Oh, wait. There's one more part to this video. Hold on. Okay, here's his last comment from his good video 2 years ago.
But the happy consequence, kind of like we said with regard to item number 1, the 2 teloi of marriage. The happy consequence is not the animating principle. The animating principle is the way we justify something. So
that's very good. The animating principle is the way we justify something, which is why the conjugal act can only be justified when it's seeking procreation. It must, otherwise it's fornication. Otherwise it's sin. He's saying that, I should replay what he just said. It was so good. Hang on a second.
For not just punishment of the death penalty, but all punishment.
Wait, yeah, he's basically saying
it's not a consequence.
Love isn't cool when it's number 1.
Or all proportional punishment. That it makes folks happier and better, safer. But the happy consequence, kind of like we said with regard to item number 1, the 2 teloi of marriage. The happy consequence is not the animating principle.
Love does not win. When you make satisfaction rather than hard work the goal, then it's not good. You have to work hard to get the satisfaction. If you're trying to make love your goal, you're going to destroy yourself or each other trying to get that. All right. This is why you have to have your roles laid out in stone. She has a ton of kids. He gets to work. He wears the pants. She submits, and he loves. You don't get that right. You start blowing all that out, and you have mutual love. Hoo-hash. No, not going to work. And Tim is correct on all this stuff, except now he has embraced NFP and the law that goes with it, so he's undermining all the things that he just said. Now, we are going to go to the next part where he has turned into one of those politicians who's been in D.C. for a few years and forgot what got him there. All right, so we're going to skip all around in this video, but he's going to, like I said, he's going to say the opposite of everything that you just heard. Get ready. Go.
At spes. The modern Catechism 92, which says in number 2363, there is, now it's rubber stamp. There's this twofold end of marriage in 2363, CCC 2363.
Got it.
Good of the spouses and procreation. Good of the spouses includes not being tempted to burn. Number 2362, acts are noble and honorable as long as they check these 3 boxes. Even if you're not trying for a baby each time, as long as you're not blocking little sperm half babies from joining with eggs, then you're good.
By the way, NFP blocks through timing. That's all it does. It just closes. It closes the opportunity.
Number 2369 repeats the language. It has a unitive primary purpose and a procreative primary purpose.
2 telos is 2 primary ends. Didn't Tim, you just tell us that that's crazy? That's weird. You can't have 2 primary purposes. Now you just said we can. I wonder which one is right. What should we go? Should we go with the Roman Catechism or should we go with the Modern Catechism? Tim, and should we go with Tim Gordon? Will the real Tim Gordon please stand up? You know something also right down below here, this guy, this dude, this other, here's my arm. Does my arm work? That guy right there, Pantile. I don't think he's buying it, man. He was pretty quiet during the whole video. And he's also, I've heard him say something recently. Somebody pointed it out to me. He's kind of like, no, marriage is one purpose. And I don't think he's picking up everything that Tim's laying down here. Okay, hang on. We're almost done with this part.
Don't have to be tending to the same purpose in the same way at the same time. They just both have to be open. Now, we gave you the analogy.
If both are open, that means that neither is primary, because you can't have 2 primary purposes, but one automatically becomes primary, which leads me to another video. We might as well look at it now. And I'm going to show you, for all you non-PhD, non-action theorist Thomists who, think basic, why only one primary works. Check this out. This is why logic and nature will tell you can only have one primary. Even if you say there's 2, you can only have one physically, logically, mathematically, one primary. Here's a couple of people trying to coexist, try a little mutual submission. A couple 2 teloses there working it out. How is it working for? Oh, looks like she won. All right. Got it. Cool. Take it away, Tim and Mike.
You have lips, which I'll wait here. Anybody who thinks that there cannot be 2 primary purposes, eating and speaking, I'll wait.
So, Tim, why don't we just show you your own video? Who said, when you say there cannot be 2 primary purposes, need we rewind it? Okay. You can't in nature. It's one primary purpose, right? When you're talking about, one act.
Anyone who thinks there cannot be secondary, tertiary, quaternary viable purposes that are non-sinful. What about whistling or blowing bubbles or tying cherry stems or whatever? I'll wait. Now.
Okay, that's enough of that. Yeah. He always uses that analogy of lips. You can do more than one thing with lips. Therefore, it has 2 primary purposes. It depends on what you're doing. If you're eating, the primary purpose is digestion. Okay, if you're doing the conjugal act, that only has one primary purpose. Although there can be other purposes for that stuff, but one primary. Now, let's go to the next little piece. Hold on. I think it's right here.
And did you accidentally terminate, without noticing it? When you're, kissing or whatever, getting ready? No. Okay, you're good. Check that second box. And then, is it unitive? Well, is everybody having a nice time and getting closer? Okay, boom.
Okay. Is it unitive? So now listen, so you can see Mike here is going like, whatever, dude. Is it unitive? He's saying it's got to be unitive. And what did he define as unitive? The obvious. Is everyone having a good time? Is everyone on board? Is it mutually consented to every time? In other words, when you consent to marital debt at marriage, you're really consenting to nothing. All it is the right to consent later. It's perpetual consent. So there's no more object of consent. There's just a symbol of consent, or what do you call it? Not an object, but a subject of consent. The subject of consent is marriage. So Tim is trying to his 2 + 2 = 5 stance, which is marriage must be unitive. And what is the legal definition? Because in order for marriage to be natural and to be licit, the act must be unitive, which means everyone's having a good time and we're getting closer, which is non-definable, totally subjective. And again, when this spouse is saying, we want procreation, and this spouse says, sorry, it's not unitive. I'm not having a good time and feeling close. I'm feeling used or whatever. So I have a right to deny you your procreation, your marital debt, Forget it. Not unitive. There's your problem, Tim, right there. This is why she doesn't have to wear the veil, because it's not mutual submission. You have to have mutual submission because unity requires everyone operating together. So Tim Gordon and I are not feeling the unity right now because poor Tim blocks me on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. So we're not feeling the unity, okay? And that's his prerogative because he's doing what he's doing. But the point is that if we were married, he wouldn't be allowed to do that. And if I said, hey, I'm your wife, Tim, and you have to not block me, I'm in charge. You can't, because I'm not feeling the unity. So you have to do A, B, and C, or it's not unitive. Okay? And you do all that stuff, and maybe we'll have some conjugal activity if I'm feeling the unity. So I wear the pants. You're the simp. Any questions? That's what's going on. Set up for failure. Now, let's go to the next little clip. Hang on.
Okay, boom. That's all the church has given us. So I will just say that we have an ecumenical document on it. One of the sacred constitutions of Vatican II, 1965. Again, we make fun of sedes. But I know I want to get you in here, Mike, for this. But Gaudium et Spes says, by its very nature, the institution of marriage is ordered to the procreation and education of offspring and to the good of the spouses. This love is unique.
Oh, shoot, I messed that up. Anyway, so if you listen to him there, how do we go with this full screen? Dang it, I messed it up. Hang on. So right there, he's all excited. He raises his voice. I think he's a little nervous. And little Mike there is going like, yo, bro, what's up? So, and good to the spouses. So we have two orientations, two heads, two things going on here. Everything Tim said earlier in the video shouldn't happen, is fruity, is retarded, doesn't make sense, is personal, is goo, is not cool, is not Pius V, is not Trent. Now he's owning it. He's going, you can, the Gaudium et Spes, the poetic document, which says marriage must be unitive and procreative. Two teloses. Two teloses used to be nonsensical, irrational, unnatural, crazy, is now good. Right, Tim?
Equally expressed and perfected through the acts proper to marriage. So you can't not accept this. You know, you're a sede. What do you say?
I think
you're not accepting it, Tim, or you didn't earlier 2 years ago. Are you a sede?
I think a lot of people are still getting this twist, and I think a lot of these guys probably have too heavy a scruple on their mind when they're saying, well, how can something have a dual primary end? I mean, we just
right. So Mike, I think, sort of gets it, even though he's a weightlifter dude. Then you have Christian Wagner, who also isn't really buddy anymore with with Tim Gordon, because Christian Wagner is kind of like, yeah, nah, not, because he knows pleasure alone is venial sin. So how does that fit in? Can't do it. Hang on, let's see what else they say.
gave the example of lips and eating and talking. I don't know how much more. Could you make that example more clear? I don't think.
I'm so tired of talking about lips.
Because
so
in that comparative, that makes the most sense. Because you took this all the way to its extreme too. It's like, well, if you're craving food simply for the pleasure of eating the food,
I don't think we need to keep going. Let's go to 2430. Hang on, 2430. Let's see what they say. 2430. Okay, right there. Oh, 2438. Oh, shoot. All right,
even Pope Pius in 1930 with Casti Connubii, who's shutting down the idea of contraception. Well, if he's a modernist for accepting that sex needs to be unitive and procreative, and that there are two primary ends, or at least a kind of a...
Oh, darn right, he's modernist for saying two primary ends. That's all that NFP is. And Pius XII caved to political pressure from Margaret Sanger and everyone else saying, look, we have a glow. And then Time Magazine, population crisis, women in the workforce, not unity. So for grave reasons, you can just, sin in a subtle way by making sure that keeping egg and seed separate. Okay. Now, Timothy Gordon said all that was total trash earlier in the video, but now he's grown. He's come around because he's got, like I said, I think it's because he's selling his what a woman is video with unity in there, which I did a big video on that already, and Father Ripperger, you got to have Father Ripperger on your side, and Father Ripperger is an NFP guy because of it's just you can't get rid of it.
Primary secondary end of the good of the spouses. Well, look at the Catechism of Trent in 1566. It acknowledged, and this is not magisterial, it's just catechetical, the chief end is procreation, and there's a chief secondary end.
Chief secondary end is like a contradiction in terms, but a chief end or a font, a chief or a font isn't canonical language, doesn't mean anything. Or a crown, the procreation is the crown. That's not canonical language. That doesn't mean anything. Chief, crown, forget it. Those are just words.
That's more than just prefigurative of the three fonts that are mutual help and remedy for concupiscence. So separate secondary ends that are basically,
he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's trying to say separate secondary ends that are basically primary.
Approximate language, but approximating. You can have multiple primary ends.
You can have multiple primary ends. Did I just hear him say that? Didn't we hear earlier that multiple primary ends is a contradiction in terms and there's only one primary end, one essence right in the beginning? I think he said that. Anyone want to double check? I don't. I've already heard it a zillion times. So like I said, we're not beating up on Tim. We don't hate Tim. We just want him to look at himself in the mirror and decide and come clean on this, okay? It's the NFP, stupid. Tim is the best out there when it comes to defining the patriarchy and wives be submissive, and that's so good. I've learned so much, and I already kind of knew a lot of it anyway, but it's good to hear it, okay? He's really good at it. At the same time, if NFP is nature, if NFP is licit, mutual submission has to have the place. And wives do not need to be submissive anymore. It's all mutual because everything has to be unitive, because you have a right to unity if you have a right to the NFP telos, which is not procreation. So here's our two teloses, and it will fall apart unless somebody gets really simped and lets her do her thing. Let's keep going on this. Let me see if there's more here.
I'll show this as a Thomist, a philosophical precept in a second. You can't have multiple primary ends.
Good
teloses.
for you. Hello.
But
wait.
It says mutual help.
Wait. What did he just say? You can't have multiple primary ends? Wait just a minute. What? I thought we were off that now. I thought we were back to multiple primary ends.
That's more than just prefigurative of the three fonts that are mutual help and remedy for concupiscence. So separate secondary ends that are basically, it's approximate language, but approximating. You can have multiple primary ends. I'll show this as a Thomist, a philosophical precept in a second. You can't have multiple primary ends.
You can't
teloses.
have. Really?
But it says mutual help and remedy for concupiscence are also ends of the act, meaning final causes.
Remedy of concupiscence is a final cause. Actually, it's a venial sin as a cause, and it's the indulgence of the act, which is pardonable sin. 1 Corinthians 7:6. It's an indulgence. Timothy Gordon, like I said, scrambled brain. Brain is melted. 2 + 2 = 5. We got to have our NFP. We need Father Ripperger on our side. We got to make what is a woman and bring in the unity, because we're going to try our hermeneutic of continuity, because we have to say Vatican II is binding new stuff. And it's not. Okay, I don't know, man. That's why I think this is such a political hot potato that when I started putting stuff on Twitter years ago, Timothy Gordon went up. Nope, can't go there. No.
Okay, so that's the Catechism of Trent. For those people that I think, what kind of set of a contest would you have to be to not accept Casti Connubii? That's Pius XI. You know, we're developing newer and newer.
All right. Let's go to Pius the 10th, or excuse me, Catechism of Trent. Right quick like, okay? Let's see what it says real quick about the ends of marriage, okay? Here we go. Roman Catechism, increase and multiply, declare the object of the institution of marriage. The words increase and multiply declare the object, not objects, okay? Not circumstances, not teloses, not significances. It declares the object. One object, which is what? Babies. Virginity is highly, and okay, and it's, you don't have to have kids. There's no obligation to procreate. It's just nature, but it's not an obligation because virginity is highly extolled and strongly recommended. Scripture, everyone is superior to marriage state, being one more perfect. Okay. No more increase and multiply as precept. It's not binding in the New Testament. You do not have to have kids. Therefore, you can shirk your duty for grave reason. Out, out, out. That's total Protestant weirdness. And that's the way they got the NFP rolling in 51. Pius XII said, not in an encyclical right up front. He said it kind of to the midwives in Italy. You know what I mean? Okay, next question, 8. Man, blah, blah, blah. What reasons man should be joined in marriage? You can join for a lot of reasons. There's unlimited number of reasons why you might want to get married. Mutual aid and support, desire a family, train up children in the true faith, service of God. This was the principal object of the holy patriarchs when they engaged in the married state. Okay? Principal object was to train up children. When they engaged in the marriage state, as we learn from sacred volume, I guess, is that the Bible? Yeah. That's right. The Bible says procreation alone is primary. It's in Tobit. It's also in Genesis. For this reason, God created the man and female. This reason is procreation. It's not love. Okay. Hence the, and then in Tobit, it's not for lust, but only for procreation. Hence the angel who, in forming Tobit, yeah, here it is, blah, blah, blah. Forming Tobit by means, hence the angel, when informing Tobit by what means he should repel the violent assaults of the evil demon, says, I will show thee who they are over whom the devil can prevail. Maybe the devil's been prevailing over Tim G because he's been going for not procreation. For they who such wise receive matrimony as to shut out God, aka procreation, for themselves from their mind, and to give themselves over to lust, aka NFP Telos, as the horse and mule which have no understanding, over them the devil hath power. That's scary, that's bad, you got to be crazy. When you start doing things to give the devil power, talk about cutting yourself out into darkness. You want to, it's like cutting your cell phone. Now you got no signal, okay? You got to be careful. The devil cannot replicate humility or obedience. Those are the two things that you must do to not be fooled. Well, we're just going to obey John Paul II, right? He's got to obey natural law. So if when he says something non-infallibly that contradicts the past, that contradicts the infallible past, you can't follow it. So just because the Catechism says it, just because Saint so-and-so from 1965 says it, doesn't make it right. You've got to use your head. You've got to use your conscience. And I don't think Timothy Gordon doesn't. Do you think he wants to sort of mix this up? Do you think he wants to see if he's right or no? He's going to get blown out. Now, he's going to get Father Ripperger mad at him. And he's going to have to edit his movie that says unity is important. Unity is required. Okay. More to the Trent. Then he adds, thou shalt take the virgin for fear of the Lord, move rather for love of children than for lust. Those, by the way, are your two options. There is no third choice of bonding or unity or love. It's babies or flesh. Those are the two. That's it, man. So, continuing with Trent. move for children rather than for lust, that in the seed of Abraham thou mayest obtain the blessing of children. This was also the sole reason why God instituted marriage from the beginning. Did I read that right? Was that a typo? Hold on a minute. Is this the Council of Trent that's infallible? The sole reason? You mean not two teloses, but one? That was also the sole reason why God instituted marriage from the beginning. Why did he institute marriage? Children, right there. And hence, married persons who by medicine, okay, and therefore, if you're trying to prevent conception, however you want to prevent conception, you know, when you're using the conjugal act, it's premeditated conspiracy to murder. Trent. Thomas Aquinas says this. Lots of other saints say this, because you are murdering providence. God is going to multiply her, what do you call it? Conceptions. In order for her to be saved, she must persevere. She must keep going and have a bunch of kids because of the curse of Adam and Eve. All right? He's got to work. She's got to have 16 kids. That's it. It's murder if you try to get out of it. It's the sin. It's the sin of the sin. Casti Canubi 108. The act of subtle sin. Sinning subtly, whatever, however it was put it. All right. As for marriage, as a natural union, it was instituted from the beginning for the procreation of the human race. That's right. So it was subsequently endowed with the dignity of the sacrament for the procreation and education of people. Yes. So marriage naturally is to make babies. And then, but nature also raises their kids. So even baby goldfish or baby bears don't just, or, you know, they don't just like, see ya. They kind of take care of you a little bit, right? Same with people. I don't know about the goldfish so much, but the bears, yeah. Don't mess with mama bear. Education. Okay. How it's so sad though. Think about this. Remember the lady on Lila Rose, speaking of mama bears, what did she do to her kids that were going to be born? She looked at one, she says, if it were up to me, you wouldn't be here. NFP is like witchcraft. It's anti-fertility, anti-baby. You're talking about your own kids and you're going to get rid of them. It's murder. Mama bear, even like the Bible says, even if your own mother should forget you, I won't forget you. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch, but you get the point. Subsequently endowed with the dignity of the sacrament, religion, okay, true of the Savior Christ. Yes. Man and woman in that relation are united in the closest bonds of affection and love. Great. Hence, it is that the sacred scripture is frequently placed before our eyes by assimilating it to marriage, this divine union of Christ and the church. Got that? It's not flesh. It's not contract. It's not law. It's assimilation to marriage. So Christ and his church is assimilated through husband to his wife. The church does not submit. Christ does not submit to the church, nor is there mutual submission between Christ and church. So it's an assimilation. This is the significance. But we're calling, look, dude, if union means Christ and his church and marriage is a union of husband and wife, then Christ and his church must be one. So here's Christ and here's his church and they must be one. And if they're not one, then something is unnatural and illicit. We have to make everyone one. So it's kind of like socialism. As long as we give everybody $10 a week, everyone is equal. We have unity of money. Everyone's equal. What could be wrong with that? That's all that's going on. It's the same garbage. Hold on. Okay. Keep going with Trent. Marriage is not to be used from motives of sensuality or pleasure. Oh, it's not? Oh, come on. Wait a minute. What about NFP? What if I have a grave reason to not have kids? What am I going to use my marriage for? What motive? Right there. It says it's not to be used for that. How come? Let's read on. What does it say? But that its use is to be restrained within those limits which we have already shown are prescribed by God. What limits are prescribed by God? Increase and multiply. Only. Those are the limits. That's called the procreative order. All the saints talk about it. I've talked about it in other videos. Anyone want to know more about that? I'll send you the links, all the quotes. Francis de Sales, Aquinas, okay? They should be mindful of the exhortation of the Apostle Paul, that he says, they have wives, let them be as though they have not. Okay? Instead of those who have wives, let them love them and take their rocket ship to the moon with Christopher West and ultimate love and unity. No. Hey, did Christ ever say to the church, I will act as though I have no church? And does the church ever say to Christ, I will act as though I have no God? No. That's symbol. But as far as nature goes, unity is not nature. There is no unitive purpose. There's procreative purpose. And you got to be independent. In other words, that's why you see sometimes those beds, you've got this divider between the bed, husband on one side. Something to be said for that. It says, have wives be those they have not. The words of St. Jerome also deserve attention. A wise man says he ought to love his wife with judgment, not with the impulse of passion. That's why they have the divider between the beds. I should make a meme about that on Facebook. Okay, so with judgment. So why are we doing this? Not the impulse of passion. So what are we doing it for? Procreation. Then why are we doing NFP? So that we don't, because we're open to procreation. Why don't we use contraception to be open to procreation? We can get a vasectomy and be open to procreation. We'll talk about vasectomy after a bit. That's coming up. Okay. He will govern with impetuosity of desire. And will not be hurried into indulgence. Then he will govern the impetuosity of desire. He will govern it. Okay, how do you govern it? If unity is number one and everyone wants the unity, then that's what takes over. But if procreation is number one, then we govern. Kind of like if you're on a diet, I want to be Cookie Monster. I am a natural Cookie Monster. You put those cookies in front of me, I'm going to go like this, and the crumbs are flying, and the dog's eating it up right next to me. But I'm going to govern that. I wanted to have some alcohol today, but I didn't because I was going to make this video, and I'd be like flopping on the desk right now if I did. I hardly drink. I don't have time anymore to have any alcohol. I'm going to have a party. I'm going to be 60 in August. We'll probably have a big party. Who knows? I have a huge PA at home. It'll be fun. We're going to do some Gen X karaoke. I think we're just going to have to do that. It's super loud. There is no greater turpitude than that of a husband, than that a husband should love his wife as he would an adulteress. Woo! Turpitude, anyone? Yeah. When husband loves his wife as an adulteress, he's using a method so she doesn't get pregnant, and he is pursuing NFP purposes, which is like lust, okay? Whatever you want to call it. When you start doing that, she's going to feel like a prostitute. She's going to rip this costume in half. Get me out of here. You're messing with human nature. You're messing with the divine architect's plan. You cannot outsmart God. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature, as everyone in the 70s knows. From the 70s knows. All right. Let's continue with Timothy. All right. What does he got to say?
Slowly at first, but I want to get through Familius Consortio, and then I want to go back in time to the Catechism of Trent, because it's going to surprise people. The false dichotomy by the private theologians of the first 1,500 years.
The false dichotomy of the private theologians for the first 1,500 years. Who could those theologians be? Augustine, Aquinas, Chrysostom, and maybe a few others like Bellarmine. Hello, false dichotomy that all these guys had. But Timothy Gordon, who was Mr. Not false dichotomy earlier in the video, has now grown and he has seen the light. He's on to something, man.
Even after that.
Even after that. So in other words, up to 1965, everything before 1965 was screwed up. And how come, Tim? Help us, enlighten us, please.
Is there wasn't much explicit acknowledgement of the second primary purpose.
See? And he's like, what the heck are you talking about? There wasn't much explicit mention of the second primary purpose. Timothy, can you hear how you're like just whacked out here? Maybe a little bit, Mr. Action Theory Thomas. It's like there's those things. That's so crazy. Only a double PhD would believe it. You know, that kind of stuff. That's where I don't know what's going on, but maybe you got horse and mule problems, buddy. Continue.
Second primary telos of sex. So,
kids. Second primary telos there. Yeah.
Because they only thought the one primary purpose is procreation.
Everybody before 1965 thought the one primary purpose was procreation. But then you had in the 20th century, first you had modernism started cooking. Then you had Protestant Lambeth Conference. Then you had Margaret Sanger. Then you had Dietrich von Hildebrand. Then you had all the politics. Now you've called lust legal nature. And now you've got to backfill everything. This is why Protestants do not like history. And this is why Timothy Gordon and Patrick Coffin, for that matter, do not like history when it comes to what all the fathers said. I could show you reams of stuff which say one primary purpose, sin otherwise.
They didn't realize that there's this purpose of good of the spouses.
They didn't realize there was this purpose of good of the spouses. Wow. Nobody realized it. All the saints, the guys who levitate. I mean, are you like, hello? It's the stupidest thing. Timothy Gordon is going to correct everything that came before him on the purpose of marriage. And he's going to be right. And Mike Pantile's like, whoa, dude, that's heavy.
They assumed if it wasn't
By the way, when you see him fidgeting with his ring a lot, I was reading about that. That's kind of like a sign you're like not comfortable. You're a little bit nervous. But I interrupted something he was saying. Cool. Let's see.
Creative.
Hang on. I got to go. I got to turn this back. And look at his face. I think he's a little bit nervous. I think he's not comfortable.
Explicit acknowledgement of the second primary purpose, second primary telos of sex. So because they only thought the one primary purpose is procreation, they didn't realize that there's this purpose of good of the spouses.
Wow.
They assumed if it wasn't procreative, then there's some sort of the only possible motivant for the sexual act could be pleasure, pure pleasure alone.
Exactly right. That's because that's all it is. The Bible says it. It's said many places. It's procreation or pleasure. Those are the only purposes of the conjugal act. There is nothing else. In the Bible, it's obviously logic. You know what I mean? Right? Like, I could go on and on, but anyone want me to prove that further? I got to keep going on this video, but if you want any more to back up that statement, talk to me in the comment section and I will do so. No problem.
And anytime you do anything, having an extra bite of food when your hunger is satisfied is a venial sin. Anytime you do anything for pure pleasure alone, it's at least a venial sin. That's what leads them into this.
That's right. Anytime for pure pleasure alone is a venial sin. During menopause, during pregnancy. Why are you doing it? If procreation is not the primary purpose, then it doesn't matter. You're doing it for love or you're all right. But no, there is only one other purpose besides procreation. It's called the flesh, fleshly lust. It's in the, like, oh, brother. It's just like so basic. Everyone always knew this except our enlightened new paganism, homoculture. What else are you going to call it? Dude, we're anti-Bible, we're anti-procreation, so we're going to deify the flesh. Hello, theology of the body. Fat people could write a book called Theology of the BMI. Now, let's go to the next little chunk. Okay, a question I put on Twitter for Tim. Timothy Gordon, question he cannot answer. If vasectomy relations are not allowed, how can the church allow elective vasectomy weddings? Okay, because that's the ruling from the church in 1977. So listen to what Tim says on this. Hang on.
Each individual act is open to life, even if one of you is. Now, it's different if one of you has sterilized yourself. if one of you has sterilized yourself, one or both of you, you're not allowed to have sex.
That is true. That's Catholic. So Tim has got to either become all the way Catholic and reject NFP, or he has to allow vasectomy relations, because as long as you're open to life, and you could have a baby with a vasectomy, you know what I mean? And it's just the procreative act. So what's the problem with vasectomy, Tim? Why are you saying this? How can you say this? Because now, if you get a vasectomy, you can get married the next day. No problem, because you're open to life, and you're sorry. You're just, now you're open. Now you want kids. It's like, okay, it doesn't make any sense. You can't have it both ways, Tim.
Right. So if she's tied her tubes, if that's what you're talking about,
or if he got neutered,
or if he neutered himself, if he chopped him off, or whatever these guys called, he got the snip, you're not allowed to have sex until you reverse that. So that.
Right. So again, if he goes to his bishop will say, yes, you are. And if the bishop is wrong, then then the marriage is invalid, except everyone says the marriages are valid when you get a vasectomy. And the reason they say that is because NFP, you no longer need to procreate. You just need to do the act, which is all Timothy Gordon is saying. It doesn't matter what your purpose is, as long as it's unitive. So if he gets the vasectomy and she's united with that, then everything's cool, right? Right?
Yes. If a woman is unable to conceive, or a woman's gone through menopause, are you joking, man? You think that like a 45-year-old woman, 48-year-old woman goes through menopause and she's never going to have sex with her husband again? No, the act has to be open to life.
Okay, so when there's no possibility of procreation permanently anymore, it's an indulgence. You're not pursuing the one telos. But like Timothy Gordon says now, there's no more one telos. That was so 2 years ago. He's grown since then. So now there's multiple teloses. So as long as you're pursuing one of them, and you're open, everything's just got to be open. I'm open to this. I'm open to that. It's no longer a telos. You're just open. Again, with the musical chairs, there's one telos. I got to turn the heater back on. There's one telos, man. But if there's two, either one works, and vasectomy works. Tim?
Means you do not artificially contracept. There's not a condom or whatever the female diaphragm or chemical pill contraception. Means you avoid that.
You don't have to anymore if you're open, because all those methods aren't 100%. So you're open, just like NFP, just like during pregnancy, just like during menopause. You're open. Those are venial sins, but methods of destroying are mortal sins. And if you destroy the natural purpose through artificial timing, that's also a mortal sin. Unless there's no telos, unless everything's open, then anything goes, which is kind of what Tim's point is, which is why he can't talk about it without getting nervous and avoid, because it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't mean because a woman has gone through menopause or maybe was never able to conceive that you can't have sex. Holy cow, man.
Yeah, I did a whole video on that. Anyone want the link? Let me know. I'll give you the link. It's venial sin. All the saints have said this, and it's 1 Corinthians 7:6. It's an indulgence, which is a sin. No telos or multiple teloses, multiple things, as long as you're pursuing what somebody wants, doesn't matter. Okay, and there's only two things you could want: the flesh or procreation. So as long as you're pursuing one of those, which is 100% of the time, it's fine, right? That's why it doesn't make sense to Tim. However, Tim has got to be all Catholic or all not, and he's somewhere in between, which is why it's been said the United States is going to become all Catholic or it's going to become atheist. There's no in between. Ultimately, something's got to give. Something eventually will go there. Now, while I'm thinking of it, let's hear what St. Alphonsus says. Hold the phone. Okay, so you can always take St. Alphonsus to the bank. This is what all the popes have said. All right, he's right. Now, someone just sent this to me. It's really good. Eunuchs contract invalidly because they lack both testicles, because they do not emit true semen suitable for generation. Suitable for generation? I thought it only had to be suitable for love. So a eunuch. Oh, if you ask AI now, can a eunuch get married in the Catholic Church? The answer is yes, because generation is no longer the telos, Tim, like you used to say 2 years ago. That's out, Doc, as Bugs Bunny would say. Nor does it matter. Like sterile old men, they satisfy female desires. So there you go, Tim. Menopause. It's not about procreation. It's about the secondary ends, which is venial sin, independent of procreation, which is no longer possible. Okay. In menopause, because they do this not through a copulation suitable for generation by their nature, due to the defective semen which old men nevertheless emit, even if old men is accidentally not prolific. All right. The Bull of Sixtus V. I wonder, I would have to check that out, which begins with frequenter. Understand, therefore, if they lack both testicles or have them bruised, otherwise they have at least one. Okay. So, the church is out. This is why I've got to go back and do some more on my vasectomy video. Someone pointed this out, that vasectomy is impotence. And it no longer is impotence because you no longer need to procreate, because we have unity as your alternative. Telos. And now Timothy Gordon has grown along with the New Pentecost. Okay. So we can have a contradiction in terms. We can have two teloses. So you can pursue nature or not nature. While we're here, let's look at what St. Thomas Aquinas says. I'll just give a good quote. Required on the part of the agent is the intention or the due end, and thus offspring is accounted a good of matrimony. How many due ends are there, Timothy Gordon? 2 years ago, you said there was one due end. Now, and to say there's two is crazy. And now you're saying there's two and it's not crazy, Tim. So, like, come on, bro. And let's see. Let's look. Okay, here's a little chunk from Humanae Vitae, which is rich. Humanae Vitae 7. Married love must be accurately defined. You can't do it. It's never going to be defined. It's impossible. They're telling you. So this is all this stuff. They're going on and on about married love. You cannot institute marriage on love. Otherwise, it becomes tyranny of the will. And as I said, this marriage contract right here behind me is going to get ripped because somebody is going to just blow right off. They're like, no way. And everyone's seen it. Love wins and hell hath no fury. And there you go. All right, back to Tim. Okay, before we do that, while we're on the topic, let's look at Catholic Inc. and what they say about vasectomy and sterility and consent and stuff. Okay, Christian Brugger and William E. May. I think William May died. I think he did. And I believe I've tried to reach this guy. I can't remember exactly, but the answer is no. Anyway, listen. To contract a valid marriage, one must possess the capacity and the will to enter into a permanent and procreative type union. The procreative part requires that only one be capable of having true intercourse, not that the intercourse must be fertile. Yeah, that's right. But true intercourse is defined by Aquinas as having the seed that procreates. Okay. If a priest knows that a person requesting marriage in the church has sterilized him or herself, he should seek moral certitude that the person intends to contract a valid marriage. But if he knows the person is unrepentant, then he has a reasonable ground for questioning whether that person has a will to enter a procreative type of union, of contract. All right? In our judgment, he should not marry. Okay, so we're talking marriage is now dependent on repentance, not nature. So he says, in our judgment, they should not marry. But he doesn't say they can't. Just because you could judge they shouldn't, yeah, they shouldn't marry. But you can't marry if you can't fulfill the contract, which is acts suitable for the generation of what? Of what? Children, not the generation of unity, love, pleasure, whatever. So Timothy Gordon is right in that if you have a vasectomy, you can have no relations for the rest of your life unless you get it reversed. However, he can't be that way anymore if he's going to keep NFP, because NFP says, yes, you can. And if you ask Father Tad over at the Center for Catholic Bioethics, he'll say, yes, you can. Si se puede. In our judgment, they should not marry. Persons who say with an intractable will, I'm sterilized and I'm not sorry. Second, having repented, their conjugal acts remain open to life, the marital acts insofar as they choose in a human manner, whatever that just means mutual submission, and are per apt for generation of child. Although the condition of sterility may make such generation impossible or at least unlikely. Okay. The act is chosen in a human way insofar as it's chosen freely. Yeah, but now they're saying, P.S., parenthetically, if you ever want to, the consummation must be made a human way, which means it requires more than one consent. It has to consent every time. Marital debt is gone. Note to Tim, I've told you this before, my man, NFP and marital debt cannot coexist because marital debt says you have a right to conjugal acts, you have a right to the debt, and NFP says you have a right to the debt in a human way, which means mutual submission, insofar as it's chosen freely. So if you come at one spouse with marital debt, the other spouse says, this isn't free and I don't want to. So it's got to be free. It's got to be mutual. It's not the result of physical or moral coercion. Oh, marital debt, moral coercion. Wait a minute. So if someone says, you owe me the right to the debt, that's moral coercion. Can't do that. Mutual submission, Tim. You want your NFP? You got to have everything that comes with it. Vasectomy, no veils, mutual submission, no fault divorce, easy annulment. You can't have, it's like saying we're going to have open borders and we're going to have a great country. It's one or the other. We're going to have open definition of marriage and we're going to have a great marriage. Wrong. It's one or the other. And it is per se apt for the generation of a child insofar as an ejaculatory of the sexual intercourse between a married woman, man and woman, is the kind of act from a procreation could follow if couples are fertile. Faithful moral theologians and canon lawyers disagree on the question of whether an intentionally contraceptive act of intercourse using chemicals are per se apt for the generation of children. We believe it is not. All right, how dumb is this? Faithful moral theologians question. Hey, if they're faithful, they're full of the faith. The faith only says one thing. All right, if contraception is an act, and then he says we believe it is not. I don't care what you believe. I only care what the church teaches, and I only care what the faith says. How many teloses are there, Tim? 1 or 2? If there's 2, then contraception is fine and sterility is fine, as in vasectomy, tubes tied, whatever that, all that stuff. It's all fine because you're open to life. Life could happen. As long as you're capable of doing the nuts and bolts, that's all you need. Right, Tim? That's what you say like a broken record. So this William May Brugger stuff, we believe it is not, and faithful moral theologians disagree. Okay, and faithless ones do too. You either have the faith or you don't. Okay, so there's that. We covered that. Cool. Hold on. Okay, so here's more recent history. After Timothy Gordon has grown from his one telos he grew a second telos. Let's listen up.
Aspect, but we're talking about the fact that the church has taught definitively that there are 2 inseparable teloses. Purpose.
The church has not taught that. It's taught that there's one and it's independent. A primary purpose is independent. Otherwise, it depends on the primary purpose. So it cannot be primary if it's dependent. Whatever one is independent must come first, can only come first. Otherwise, it comes second because it's dependent on what comes first. Basic math, logic. Timothy Gordon, you should be all over this because that's right up your alley. But you are like, because for some reason, and I believe it's political, you're baked on NFP, so logic must escape you, which is why I said in the beginning, this is how NFP can scramble your brain. You can't think straight, and then when someone brings you logic, what do? You panic. You push the panic button.
So anytime you're doing the act without some sort of impediment, direct impedimentation to the act, like contraception, that's what makes it wrong when you subvert it. But when
so using contraception subverts it inverts the ends, but if the ends are inseparable, then it doesn't invert the ends. So it subverts it. What are you talking about? It inverts the ends, and that's what NFP does, inverts the ends, but we can't say that. So now we're just saying contraception is when you physically do something, but NFP planning is physical, you know. I'm talking too much, sorry.
you do the act for itself, and you have these
Oh, wait. You do the act for itself. Did I just hear him say the purpose of the conjugal act is for the conjugal act? You're doing the act for itself. AK, you're doing the act for me. You're doing the act for how I feel, for what I want from it. You're doing the act for the sake of doing the act. Love wins, all right? If there's no purpose to the act except for doing the act, it's called whatever you get out of it. What do you get out of it? If not procreation, oh, I don't know, fill in the blank. Doing the act for itself is the new paganism. That's what they do. It reminds me of this line from an interview with the Sex Pistols. We don't think, we just do.
three fonts. I would say it's an overcomplication to say, well, so we're doing the act for the purposes of being open to the generative powers, the procreative powers, and for the
We're doing the act for being open to the generative powers? No, that's not a purpose. Being open is not a purpose. You're being open to what? You have to be oriented toward. A telos, I use it like telescoping antenna, an antenna pointing towards something. An antenna is not open to something, it's pointing towards something. It's trying. It's like having a radio that's open to radio waves. It could be open to being a boat anchor, you know, whatever. No, it has a purpose, a telos. The antenna is pointing towards trying to get something, not being just open to something, it's toward something. So doing the act for itself, he just betrayed his self right there. He's like basically saying, flesh number one, go back to the musical chairs. Logic only has one primary purpose. One thing must come first. And Timothy Gordon is saying, number one is doing the act for itself, aka flesh. Primary purpose, flesh. I don't care what kind of family planning you use. One primary purpose, flesh.
purpose of unitivity, which is for the good of the spouses.
Okay, he said so much so fast. We'll just go back because I interrupted too much.
Like contraception, that's what makes it wrong when you subvert it. But when you do the act for itself and you have these three fonts, I would say it's an overcomplication to say, well, so we're doing the act for the purposes of being open to the generative powers, the procreative powers, and for the purpose of unitivity, which is for the good of the spouses. I've already guaranteed it's noble and worthy. Therefore, it's impossible at that point. Even if you...
Yeah, noble and worthy, It's fornication unless for procreation. Because of original sin, it's the same thing as fornication unless for procreation. That's Aquinas. Because of original sin, you're bringing more sin into the world, so procreation, education, all right? It's not good in and of itself unless unity is essential, and then love is essential, and then flesh is essential. Therefore, it's good in and of itself. That is a complete change. There's no way Pius V said the act is good and worthy in and of itself. It has to be properly ordered to make it okay, per like St. Francis de Sales. Anyone want the quotes on that? I'll give them to you.
Even if the agent might misjudge that they're doing it mainly for pleasure, that it's
remember I talked about the agent earlier, St. Thomas Aquinas? The agent must be seeking procreation, not misjudge and a little of this, a little of that. The agent must be seeking procreation. If he's not, it's an indulgence. It's venial sin. And if he's using a method, it's mortal sin.
pleasure alone. There's at least some aspect that is because...
so he's just saying, as long as you have an admixture, you have 37% procreation and 63% pleasure, or somewhere, some mix in there, as long as you get up to... It's like, that's just dumb. It's 100% one, or 100% the other. And if you're a pagan, you're pursuing whichever one you want. And that's what NFP is, whichever one you want. But they dress it up in Catholic language. You just discern prayerfully and go with whatever you want.
Because form is specified by intent, right? There's some
Form is specified by intent. What is your intent? If it's procreation, you can't have vasectomy. You can't have NFP because intent is procreation. But if intent is the act in itself, you can have vasectomy. You can have NFP. You can have contraception, because as long as the nuts and bolts are going the right way, you know what I mean? And your goal is not to have a baby. That's why all Catholics, once you let NFP go, you have to let contraception go. And if you call it all nature, then nature is whatever you say it is.
some aspect that is shaping the act, animating the act, that qualifies for both of the two purposes.
Both of the two purposes. Okay. Sorry, we're just like totally hammering this. 2 years ago, marriage had one purpose. Today, it has two purposes. Timothy, you're going to become a new Pentecost Catholic before you know it, and then who knows what it'll be after that. Once you start riding the horse and mule, the lights go out, and who knows what'll happen. As I think it was St. Jerome, there's a meme making the rounds. It's like he never met a heretic that didn't have a sixth commandment problem, something like that. Some words to that effect. I could probably find it, but anyway, let's go to the next little piece.
Sure, it is actually. I'm confident it is, rather. One of those lines that is like almost de fide. So there are two purposes to the act, two teloi, whether one's primary and one's secondary. There are two teloi that are not opposed.
Yes, they are opposed, because a teloi, a purpose is opposed to the other purpose. You're going to drive your car left or right at the fork. Well, they're not opposed. I can drive both. I'm trying to avoid pregnancy, or I'm trying to get pregnancy. Those two purposes are opposed. If I'm trying for pleasure, then I'm not trying for pregnancy. But if I'm trying for pregnancy, you can have secondary ends. That is the order of procreation that must be, unless there's no order, because there's multiple teloses, and there's only if there's two purposes, and there's only two purposes anyway, so there is no purpose. But there has to be a primary one, and that is basically flesh at this point.
And they can be honored in different ways as long as it's non-contradictory to the other.
They're going to contradict at some point, because when one person asserts the law and the other person asserts their law, there's going to be a contradiction. So whose law wins? The one without exception, and that is flesh. In other words, unity always wins.
Is the definitive magisterial formulation of...
No, it's not. The definitive magisterial formulation is procreation alone is primary and independent. That is definitive magisterial. Humanae Vitae is an encyclical, and encyclicals are not infallible, and it's just more Vatican II poetry, where they've taken what's poetry and they've tried to make it nature and law. By the way, Vatican II, Humanae Vitae contradicts itself. If you want me to know more about that, message me in the chat or in the comment, and I'll tell you. Let's see here.
The threefold fonts, which is sex must be marital, procreative, unitive. Mm-hmm. Now here, LARPs will get off. Some weirdo did a video on me for like 5 hours. That's they start using terms like
so far.
NFP. I don't even know what NFP is. I mean, like, obviously, it's I know. Yeah. Dummy normies use.
Why would he think that's funny? I don't know. I don't know what NFP is. That's because, Tim, you have grown in the last 2 years, and now you're saying as long as you're doing the act for the act itself, what difference does it make if you use NFP? Because it doesn't do it's neither here nor there. You know, it's like looking out the windshield of your car while you're driving in a certain way. It doesn't make any sense. It's like you're just driving and you're looking. What difference does it make? As long as I'm driving, looking out my windshield, it doesn't matter why or what. You know what I'm saying? So that's why he thinks NFP is not a thing. Yeah, it is a thing. You're attempting to keep nature from occurring. You're the purpose. What purpose is that? The purpose is the act itself now. So who cares what you're trying to do with it?
That dummy trads use, that they get into arguments. It's just a dumb expression. It's not even a real thing. Yeah. All you have to be doing are, because I mean, I'm a philosopher, I'm a metaphysician, is honoring something materially and formally as you perform that act. And if you do so, then you are not contravening against nature. So as it concerns sex,
unless nature has one telos, which you always said, then you are contravening against nature if you're not pursuing the telos, which is what Aquinas says you got to do, or it's venial sin. And if you use a method, it's mortal sin.
The definitive magisterial formulation is, you know, it is an inseparable two purposes of unity.
No, it's inseparable significances, like Christ and his church are inseparable signs. You cannot take Christ away from his church and vice versa. Those have to go together. They're signs. However, you can take procreation away from unity, quote unquote, or secondary ends, because one must be independent. Must be independent. Can Christ exist without the church? Yeah, but now that he's made the church, he's one flesh. I guess that's a bad analogy. You ain't going to separate the two because they're one flesh, okay? But this is why all this crazy talk about one flesh union, which means everything has to be unitive, everything has to be the same, everyone has to be the mutual submission. All right, hang on.
Activity and procreativity and the conditio sine qua non it's just a dumb expression. It's not even a real thing. Yeah. All you have to be doing are, because I mean, I'm a philosopher, I'm a metaphysician, is honoring something materially and formally as you perform that act. And if you do so, then you are not contravening against nature. So as it concerns sex, the definitive magisterial formulation is, you know, it is an inseparable two purposes of unitivity and procreativity, and the conditio sine qua non must be marital. And then jump all
the sine qua non, it means the essential purpose must be marital? No, it must be procreative. Sorry, Tim. Just like you said before, you were right when you were waving around your Roman Catechism, which is pure gold. That's what it says. Remember, sole purpose? Roman Catechism, sole purpose is procreation, in black and white. We showed it to you. I'll show it to you, Tim. But now you're saying that's not true? Based on what? Fruitiness from JP2 and company.
Second says this in 1981 in Familiaris Consortio, and he says some other fruity things in the Theology of the Body lectures that get grouped by fruity guys like Christopher West. So people think it's just JP2, but no, this comes ultimately from Scripture, from the Catechism of Trent. So you have to accept that there are two inseparable purposes, or else.
No, you have to accept that there are two inseparable significances. And a sign, Aquinas says a sign is one thing, but a purpose is another. And this is where JP2 is doing the very thing, as I said earlier in the video, that you don't like, Tim. He's taking poetry, he's taking signs, he's taking significances, and he's making them into legal nature. Once he's got you hooked on it, he says, by the way, we're going to treat it as, so this, it's called it's what they're doing. They're taking two different things and putting them together. They're making a sign into law and nature.
That are non-contradictory. And, you know, as long as
this is where things get kind of weird, because
they sure do get kind of weird. And Christian Wagner, I think, parts company with Tim after this video. I don't think he's coming back. They get weird because Timothy's going to explain that it's a venial sin to pursue pleasure alone. So how do you square that with NFP? You can't. It doesn't work. Moving on. Okay. Let's see what he's got to say here. He's got his Iggy Pop face on. Check that out.
Oh, as long as you're married, it's procreative and it's unitive. As long as, I guess it wouldn't be unitive if you're raping your wife or something,
Okay, so marital rape never existed in the history of the world until, and as far as the United States go, till 1993. There is no such thing as marital rape. It cannot exist because the object of consent is the right over the body. Rape, one of the things which must be included in the definition of rape as a crime is lack of consent. So when you have NFP as law, you must have mutual consent, mutual submission all the time. So these people right here, this couple right here, there could be marital rape because it has to be mutual all the time, not just at marriage, not just at the altar. So he thinks that's funny or something, but I'll show you the quote from Aquinas if you want. Aquinas will say, there ain't no such thing as marital rape, but there is now, because it has to be mutual, because we have two telos, Tim, saying everything must be, it has to have those two teloses, which means unitive. They have to be together, which means if they're not, you're getting marital rape, because like he said, the definition of unity, unitive purpose, is everyone's getting along and we're all liking this and stuff. Everyone's having a good time. Rape is not a good time for one person, apparently. So this whole rape thing, marital rape, is a new invention, just like vasectomy marriage is a new invention. And you have to reinvent the Catholic faith when you make NFP law, because objectivity disappears. Canon 915 disappears. And there's no such thing as public sin anymore. Adultery is fine. Divorce is fine. Easy annulment is fine. Contraception is fine. NFP is fine. Vasectomy is fine. Because unity is now the essence, and it's the tyranny of will.
But I mean, as long as you both want to have it, yes, there will be pleasure, but there's a good to the end because it's a noble end. It's always going to make you closer together.
He is just admitting there's one primary purpose: unity and closeness. That's the primary purpose. You can't get around it. Go back to the musical chairs if you get confused on that. If you get too many PhDs in the way, if you're thinking too hard. This is why I'm trying to telegraph this to Mr. Logic and Thomism and Action Theory himself, Timothy Gordon. One primary purpose, one independent purpose can exist at a time. Only one. Logically. That's why he used to say it's all crazy 2 years ago. But then he's like, wait a minute, we're going to have to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Let's go to the next. Check this out.
The morality of the act. And the church has taught the opposite. So the church is with me.
Let's see here. Be the Patriarch says, good. Let's throw out the term NFP.
Oh, I don't ever use it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people ask us about NFP, and we're always just like, we don't really know. It's kind of an odd, like the whole thing. We're always just like, yeah, we don't.
Well, it's people that don't understand moral philosophy trying to reason about moral philosophy. That's all it is.
Interesting.
Okay. So NFP is about people trying to do moral philosophy that don't understand moral philosophy. So when you use the phrase NFP, it's retarded. You don't know about moral philosophy. Let's check that out for a minute. So here is somebody you've heard of, John Paul II, addressing the teachers of NFP right here, okay? Somebody who apparently knows about philosophy and stuff and is not retarded, as Tim will say later. NFP is for retards, using the phrase and stuff. What does he say? Here it is, natural fertility regulation. Hello, brothers and sisters. I'm JP2. We're going to talk about NFP, okay? There it is right there. It's all about Humanae Vitae, and we're going to talk about NFP. So we got to have more NFP, okay? That's John Paul II, who doesn't know anything, apparently. So maybe that's not so dumb after all. Okay, so now here, it's the initiative of NFP is inspired by the gospel. All right. So who wants? Do you want to be against the gospel? You got to go with NFP. It's not retarded because the gospel isn't retarded. The gospel isn't wrong. So you can't be against. In other words, if you're against the gospel, you're against NFP, and therefore you don't understand philosophy. Right. Right. at the first stage of life. Centers for Natural Family Methods of Regulate, blah, blah, blah. Centers for NFP should be promoted. So there you got JP second, as you know, all about it. Okay, there's the evidence right there. Let's continue listening to hang on. Let's go to where we need to get. Just a minute. All right, Tim, hit it.
Of the sex organs to do their thing, and that's what it is. So they're not alike at all. But I still don't know what people mean when they say NFP like it's a separate act. I just think it's a retarded term for retards.
Yeah, a lot of people use it, and I always ask.
John Paul II's a retard. I don't know about that. It's not a retarded term for retards. It's a term for Catholic contraception. That's what it is. All right. And okay, continuing.
About it. I'm just, it's very confusing because it's like, yeah.
You just mean having sex with your wife? Like, well, no, but you having sex with your wife when you know when she ovulates or has her period. I'm like, well, do you know how I know when my wife ovulates or has her period? You can pick to have illicit sex based on whether or not it's procreate, open to procreative powers. And
it's licit when you're pursuing procreation, when you're oriented toward the one telos. But if the one telos is just the act itself, then as long as you're not trying to thwart the act, yeah, it's like thwart procreation. But who cares if you thwart procreation? Anyway, this is how stupid it is. All family planning thwarts procreation by hook or by crook. Comes in the front door or it comes through the roof. Either way.
And you're married and it's unitive. If it's licit in all those three ways, you can have sex anytime you want or not have sex anytime you want. Are you saying
not during pregnancy or menopause and not during menses? That's in the Bible, and Aquinas points that out. She's not allowed to ask for the debt during menses because that's technically when there's no procreation available, okay? Even though it can happen, and the kids can suffer from that because of the sins of the parents. And if he requests the debt during that time, it's venial sin because it's an indulgence because there's no procreation going. And she's supposed to talk him out of it. That's Casti Canubi 59.
It's a sin to not have sex on her most fertile day?
No, because there's no duty to procreate.
No. Are you saying it's a sin to have sex on her least fertile day? No, because we know you can even have sex when she's postmenopausal.
No, you can't. And St. Francis de Sales explains it, and the other saints do too. And if you want me to show you that in the comment section, I will.
So end of story. End of story there.
Yeah, end of story, Tim. We've done it. We got to everything. So, Tim, come on back home to the Catholic Church, you might say, and please clean up this contradiction from the one telos to the two telos. If you're not against NFP, you're not on the team, so go out there and stay toxic. And in the meantime, avoid the two-headed monster, which is coming your way if you have two telos.
She's gotta have some fun.
You know I'm right.
Oh, no, you're wrong.
We fighting yet?
We get along. My two heads are better than one.
Turn left.
Go right.
Go straight ahead.
Back up instead.
Let's hesitate.
It's like she has to run.
When I'm annoyed,
I'm overjoyed.
but when I'm glad,
I'm underjoyed. My two heads are better than one.
I like that so much that I had to make myself the host. I'm gonna play it again. I've become a bum, I can't feed myself. Become too tired, I need free healthcare. I'm becoming thin, all I want to do is eat more like you. Have no work to do.